Welcome, whoa, that's that loud. Yeah, that is really loud for a way. I have to sit back here.
No, she wanted to.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, councillors. Welcome, staff. Welcome, members of the public viewing in. Welcome, Kerry, if you're on tune. Always good to have the press here for our meetings. Councillors, welcome to Performance and Monitoring 21-8. With that, I have an apology for lateness from Councillor Marsh. And I'm looking for a mover in a second. I've got Councillor Dean, Councillor Denia. I'll put that all in favour.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. Councillors, I'll just remind you of any declarations of interest you've had. You've all read the agendas. Look around. James.
I've got a conflict in the confidential section, so I'll raise that again then.
Okay, thank you for that, signalling that. Councillors, just one more reminder, when you to speak, could you please use your microphones? That way there, people following it on Zoom can hear your views. Right, with that, go to no public forum, no presentations. So we go to the Group Manager of Finance and Technology Services report. Kumaran. No, not that we know of. There's no public forum.
No, it's not public forum.
No.
Good morning, Chair Don and elected members. This report is essentially providing councillors with an overview of council's operations, financial operations and performance for the month period ended 31 October. Essentially, I'll take the report as read and I'll just cover off some key highlights with operating income and operating expenditure essentially tracking just below year-to-date budget of around just over $3 million for both categories, for each of both of those categories. And then you've got capital expenditure tracking at $2 million below year-to-date budget. And that's taking into account some of the disruptions the business had to face since the start of the financial year. That's more or less on track in terms of year-to-date budget performance. From a treasury side of things, council's external debt still remains at 90 million, with net debt tracking at just over 30 million at the end of October. And that's as a result of rates income coming in, which has increased council's cash balance. But there was a series of substantial payments made afterwards, which will be reflected in the next month's report to show you that net debt would have gone back up again. And that's just a reflection of council's cash flow timing at that point and its influence on the net debt balance. In terms of interest rate swaps, the coverage of fixed rate pricing is within council's policy of 50 to 95%, so sitting at 62% at the end of October and well within the policy bands for council. And there were no treasury policy breaches for the end of October, so in compliance with all of council's key treasury ratios. So overall at that point, from a financial perspective, council's more or less on track at the end of October.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Murray Bench.
Would you just comment on the headwinds that are out there for a council or any local government when it comes to the supply of materials and our purchasing, how that impacts on our finances? Are we under pressure for increased costs?
Operationally, we are certainly under pressure for increased costs. Things around wages, things around what our suppliers are charging us, definitely has upward pressure on our prices. Probably the other major constraint is around what we can actually achieve in the capital space. So shipping costs from the States or China have doubled over the last couple of months. So it takes twice as long for things to arrive from the States or China as it did 3 months ago, and that has a pressure on what we can actually achieve. So if we're waiting on materials to arrive, that's probably the biggest thing that we're monitoring at the moment, is around what we can deliver in the capital space with the supply chain demands and those pressures.
Councillor Denia.
Yeah, there's been a large volatility in net debt this year. Obviously, there is the cyclical nature of rates income, but one of the other papers says we're only $2 million behind in budgeted capex spend. So have we managed to reduce net debt by 43 million in the last couple of months, whereas previous peaks and troughs have been around 20 to 25 million?
Yeah, the main driver is just the scale up, the step change as part of year one of the LTP. So those significant payments we've made in the last few weeks, one of them is GST. So as our revenue is larger than prior years, that GST payment is also higher. The other part is the rates we collect on behalf of regional council. So we were holding on to a significant amount of cash on behalf of regional council. We've now had to pass through. So we'll see those cash balances drop in the next month's financial reports. With regards to the capital program being 2 million under budget, when we look at what we think we're going to achieve, we phase those budgets more around earthwork season. So the way the budgets are phased, we will spend more money later in the financial year as the weather windows open for earthworks and those seasonal spends are likely to occur.
Thank you. And just as another question, I noticed the budget has a tenfold increase in associate income forecast this year. Can you explain that one, please? I'll just find it. So in the key financial issues document, and just find it here, sorry. Our interest in associates, so it's not the income in the balance sheet, goes up from around 200,000 to 2.3 million. Can you perhaps explain why that is forecast to go up?
Sorry, Councillor Denia, is that in the balance sheet or income statement? Page 4?
Yes, that's right.
The budget line there is around the borrower notes. So every time we borrow money from the LGFA, we have to give money back for them to hold as borrower notes in case the LGFA ever ran into problems. They could convert those into shares or other options to preserve cash. We haven't had to borrow because the spend in the capital program is yet to properly occur. We haven't had to make those borrowings from the LGFA, and there's the corresponding borrower notes have not yet had to be placed with the LGFA. But when we deliver the capital program as envisaged, and we do need to make those borrowings we have in the LTP, we will need to make those borrower notes investments with the LGFA.
Thanks, James. Councillor Dean.
So you just made a comment that we're holding money that's to go to regional council. What is our policy on holding back payments from the 30 days when they're due? I've been the recipient as a small business owner of having to wait up to 90 days for payments from councils. And do we have such a policy? And if so, why?
So, Councillor, are you referring to specifically for the regional council, or in general?
Referring to generally.
So we've made a policy decision as a council to be a good corporate citizen in the Bay of Plenty. Due to our scale and size, we spend a lot of money locally, and we've made that decision to get that when we receive bills from our suppliers to get that money out into the economy as quickly as we can. So we've made a policy decision to have a 30-day turnaround for our creditors in order to get that money out into the economy.
Thank you. That's heartening to hear.
Councillor Henry.
So my question is about on page 2 of one of the supporting papers. It's the budget about financial contributions received. And I am concerned when I look at that and see all the red bracketed areas with the variance to budget, which is 903. So what I'm asking you is, when I look at this report, can you direct me in your report where you explain that? Because I wasn't sure. I'm looking for an explanation why the financial contributions and show a variance, so much of a variance to all those budgets there. And being that we're only a short way into this financial year, it is a concern.
We do make brief commentary in the report around the fact that we are behind budget year to date. We've raised several times in previous meetings around when we forecast what we think we will receive in financial contributions. It's a very fluid situation. Mechanically, a developer, when they apply for a subdivision, has up to 5 years to pay their financial contribution, and in certain circumstances they can extend for another 2 years. So we talk with the developers. We make our own forecast based on the consensus of the volume that comes through. But the budgets for financial contributions are difficult to properly.
Yeah.
So in some years we've had $18 million above. We've had $18 million worth of revenue. Some years we've had $5 million worth of revenue. It's very fluid from year to year. But there's no immediate cause for concern around those red numbers.
Yeah. I don't mean to be rude, but there is a consistent message about getting the financial contributions forecast over what we actually get. And the concern would be that I'm mindful of the rate setting for next year. And if they don't come in, is this going to affect what we have set for the rates for next year?
There's no impact on rates. There is a connection to debt, certainly, but there's no connection to the rates income.
Okay.
So when we work on getting those financial contributions right, we're talking about the price that we charge the developer. Whether it falls into one year or the other, we can adjust for, but it's
Okay,
more.
that's fine.
There is
Thank
no
you.
impact on rates.
And just to add to what David's indicated, that those budget variances is more a reflection of the time lag in the process as opposed to realization of budgets versus actual revenue. So it's council making some assumptions on when it expects to see that revenue. What manifests itself in terms of the variances is the time lag that David's just covered between.
But you know you're always going to get it.
Yes, it's just a question of timing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a comment just from the first question regarding market pressures. So if we look at some of our recent procurement, we had one tender from about 4 suppliers for sludge removal at Kirikiri to come in as a good tender, but it was still only a single tender. There's been 2 recent professional services contracts and good set of work in them. Both only received 1 price or 1 bid for it. So 3 other suppliers would go, we're too busy, we can't do it. And the other factor that's still sitting there is the COVID claim for the last lockdown. So the contractors are looking at what the claim is for the lockdown through contractually. There's an issue with the loss of profit, loss of work. So there's a potential for a claim on our major contracts for that as well. So that's additional price pressure or cost pressure for delivering the current program of work. So those are some factors. We've got some roading projects coming out shortly. It'll be interesting to see the tenders on those, and it will be a very good measure for us.
Right, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, David and Kamaran, for that. Could I have a mover and seconder for that report? Councillor Henry, Councillor Murray-Bench. I'll put that all in favour. And those against, carried. Also need a mover and a seconder for the schedule of payments on page 8. Councillor Granger, Councillor Denia. I'll put that all in favour. Those against, carried. Thank you. Welcome, Peter. off the Pongakawa now, and I believe, do we have Joanne and Kat? Yep.
Oh, we just did that.
Yeah, just did that at Granger and Denver.
Thank you.
Okay. Morning, Peter. Do we have someone coming in on Zoom? Where's our technology team?
Yes, there's Catherine Cord and Joanne Black.
Yep.
On the trust.
Yep.
Be linking in.
So this is page 9, councillors of the agenda. Welcome, Joanne.
Oh, I've got no face for some reason.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
can hear you, Catherine. Yeah, just a bit foggy down that way.
Might be something wrong with my camera, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll lead off, Mr. Chair. First of all, just welcome, I guess, virtually to the chamber, Joanne Black and Catherine Court, who are members of the trust.
There's
And
another one. Have you got his contact details?
I did, but I don't.
Okay, I'll
Yeah, so Deirdre Lack.
who aren't on mute at the moment.
We love technology.
So they'll be available to clarify any questions that councillors may have after my quick presentation. Yeah, so just by way of background, an opportunity came up. This has been going on for about 4 or so years now, this idea about a heritage building out at Pongakawa. The opportunity came up a couple of years ago with the availability of a old bungalow dwelling that was going to be removed off the site due to the land being converted into kiwi fruit. So to assist the trust, we agreed that we would allow them to transport the building as a temporary arrangement to site on the domain until they sorted out their final positioning after having done their due diligence, which they've done and have approached us now with this final site for lease. So we've been through that process. Another key part of the report is looking at the long-term strategic use of that particular part of Pongakawa domain. We believe it's probably better to put it into classification of local purpose reserve, which allows for more of this type of activity as opposed to recreation reserve, which is your tennis courts and sports grounds, etc. So that's another part of the report that we've put in here. Yes, as I was saying before, the trust has completed its due diligence, geotech, and looked at the effluent fields, etc. So the lease takes into consideration that research that they've done on the site, and they've shown us what their preferred site is. So the process today for elected members is to go through and ask the trust of any questions they may have. Other than that, if you agree in principle to move forward, then we advertise the public consultation or do a letter drop to the to the kindergarten, the neighbours, tangata whenua in the school, and get their feedback, and it'll be open for the general public to have feedback as well into the process. And it takes, if all goes well, that'll be happening over the Christmas, New Year, into the New Year, because there's some statutory limitations on timeframes. Just another thing to be mindful of, we are in the process of reviewing the Tupuki Makatu Reserve Management Plan, but we believe that this would have a fit into that process anyway. So that's pretty much my summation of the report, Mr. Chairman. So have any questions?
Joanne, would you like to take yours off mute for a minute and just, do you want to say a few words before we turn it over to the councillors? And then I'll hand it over to Catherine the same, if you like. So, do you want to unmute?
Mute.
Yeah, that's it.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I just wanted to really, I'll focus on the fact that our group, just so that everybody can understand that we have a very solid group of a committee, which is now a charitable trust, and we have 8 to 10 members, and we've actually all been together as a group for probably about 5 years now. We basically ran the Jubilee, the 125th Jubilee of the school, and then from that is where this idea came from, because there's a lot of memorabilia and historical artefacts to do with the school and the community. So the idea came from there that it would be great to have a facility, and that's where this house has come from. So all the people involved have been involved in a lot of community activities in Pongakawa, and we're all committed to this project, and we'll see it through and make sure that it comes to fruition, and set up good processes for the future. because we see it as a great asset to our little Pongakawa community. And I think perhaps any of you that know the community, we've got a great school, a great lot of families around here, and we've seen other projects through, such as the Action Centre and other projects like that. So, and we're sort of keen to connect the school, the play centre, the hall. It's all in the same vicinity there, and that's how we've come up with this placement. So, and it's been really great to have the cooperation of Peter and Joe from the council to help us navigate this part of the procedure. So I can pass over to Catherine, who can add some more to that, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me. I'm sorry, my camera doesn't seem to be working today, but yes, the only thing that I'd like to add was that I feel that this will bring a really historical vision to the school. I mean, the school's been around since 1892, and I think that this house is going to fit in beautifully. It's going to be very aesthetic for the whole area, and as Joanne said, link all of the facilities that surround the school. I can see it being used not only as a school resource, but as a community resource for perhaps rural support, reading recovery, Plunkett or Pipiora, whichever. You know, we really are quite excited that this house that we've been gifted is going to become an integral part of the school community and the wider community, and that we can put all our treasures together for people to view publicly when we have special events. So yes, we're very grateful for the help that Peter and Joe have given us. It's really exciting.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, a number of us councillors did visit the site last year on a bus trip Peter arranged down that way for the whole ward recreation area. So yeah, it looked like an excellent project. Any questions, Deputy Mayor Scrimmager?
Yes, good morning. Just a question, or I could ask you to comment perhaps. In our papers, this area where you propose to place the building is designated for car parking. And given that councillors are often beaten up for not providing enough car parking facilities, could I ask you to comment about how frequently this area is used for car parking?
Yeah,
You go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, because it's quite a small building really, and really there won't be a lot of people using it at the same time, so there won't be a huge need for car parking. There's plenty of grass area there. We have had a site plan done, and that was one of the questions that came up was, what about car parking? And at this stage we didn't broach it because we were waiting to see what council would say. We thought, well, there's no point going ahead if we're not going to get approval, but it is one of the things that we're looking into. But there would be a maximum of 10 cars, I would say. It's usually on our meetings that has the most cars there.
Actually, John, I'm wondering if you're alluding to the fact that it's currently designated for car parking, and if you are, then it would only be used for car parking maybe once a year when the school ag day is on and cars drive through onto the backfield of the school. So there's also car parking across the road and at the play centre and in front of the hall. So I think there's the actual area where the house is going to sit, we hope it will sit. I haven't seen that used for car parking for a very long time, so I don't think we're going to lose any area for car parking really.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was wanting made for councillors, that it's probably only once a year on Ag Day that it is currently used, and so the displacement of existing parks is pretty minimal. And yeah, thank you.
I thought you were sowing the seeds for future projects, Deputy Mayor, but anyway, in front of all the roading managers in the room. Councillor Henry, you have a question.
Okay, congratulations to you for getting this far. It's a very exciting project. And with me coming from Katikati Waihi Beach Ward. It's good to see that you're having the history being encapsulated in buildings over there. One of my questions, and I realise it's been going for a long time, and this is just about process, but has it been through the Makatu Community Board, and does it, I mean, obviously it's the process there with them to support, I'm sure they do, but.
We did attend the Makatu ward meeting in March this year. Catherine and I went along and spoke about the project to that meeting, and some of the representatives of the council were there at the time. So they will have heard about this before.
Okay. And this is another one about infrastructure. I can see this being a really great economic benefit to the area and attraction. The toilet, the facilities there, have you got a plan for how you can accommodate that in the future?
Yes, we have. We've had an architect look over it in terms of the Building Act and what we will, because we will need a building consent, and we need, obviously we'll have to have, because it's a public building, it will require a toilet and access for disabled people and all that sort of thing. So yes, we have, done the initial look over of that, and it will have toilet facilities. We also have, because we intend this to be used in conjunction at times with the hall and the action centre, there's toilet facilities in both of those buildings as well, and we cooperate. Some of our members of our trust are on the hall committee and also part of the school. So there's plenty of, facilities for that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, and good luck with the process from here on in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Murray-Bench.
I was just thinking, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing quite so exciting as when our good staff work closely with community leaders, and this is an exciting project. Can you just tell me, though, what sort of timeline, how long do you think before the process to be completed? Peter, can you tell me?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, the process of, if you pass a resolution for us to proceed with the advertising process, we'll kick that off before Christmas. But as I was saying before, part of that time frame over the Christmas period won't count because there's a statutory limitation on what you can use for these public advertising. So I would see us kicking that process off and bringing it back to the outcome of the consultation, any submissions back to full council, because it's only full council as the administering body of the reserve can make the final decision. And that would be when, it'd be probably February, March next year at least to get that process. And then if that was to be successful, the trust could then move forward with their planning and funding and building consents and stuff in those timeframes. So,
Right, I have one final question from Councillor Dean.
Partly to Peter and partly to the group. Who's going to meet the legal costs of changing the reserve status? Is it on council? And secondly, how much is the lease going to be for the group? Can they afford that lease? And thirdly, who's paying for the removal of the building and the replacement and the renovation of the building? And can the trust afford that?
right, I'll attempt to answer my parts if I think I've worked them out a while. So good point about the legal process. Normally what we say is that the applicant is exacerbated of the need for the change to get it changed to local purpose as opposed to recreation status. So normally that cost would sit with them, but it's something council may wish to consider given the, I guess, the charitable nature of the trust and what they're doing for the community. The other thing there is the building costs and removing the building, that all will sit with the trust itself. They've committed to that. And a condition of the lease that we would have in place always requires that they have the funding in place to complete the work that they need to under the building consent. That's so we don't end up with a half-built structure in the reserve and then run out of money. So they need to provide a financial plan that shows us that they've got that, whether it's secured by loan or whatever, or and other donations, that we satisfy that before they start putting a spade in the sand. Does that cover everything?
Yes, that covers it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I have a signal from Deputy Mayor Scrimger. Would you like to make some recommendations?
Yes, I'd be happy to move recommendations 1 to 4, please.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Yep, 4's the option. And I've got Councillor Gray seconding that. Any speakers to this? Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just very briefly, I really support this. I'm very strongly in favour of us keeping our history and the stories, etc., that are associated in the district or anywhere. Once it's lost, it's lost. Good on you for going through this process, and I hope you're very successful. Just my support, sir.
Thank you. We will be. We will be.
Any final speakers? Councillor Daly.
Yes. Sorry, I'd like to congratulate Joanne and Catherine as well for the work they put into this project. It's great to recognise the heritage of the area, and I know you've got a great collection. We've also got the museum in Katikati, and there's been a lot of calls from our side of the district for something similar. So it's great work, and also thank you to our staff for facilitating this.
Thank you, Grant. Right. Councillor, no, doesn't appear final words. No, I'll put that 1 to 4 as it is, moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Those against? I declare it carried. Well done, Joanne. Tick A
Thank
box
you.
on the way, and Catherine, thanks for tuning in. And we look forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the councillors and the council staff that have helped us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all looking forward to the opening now. Great work. Love an opening.
The work's just about to start, actually.
Good stuff. Right, councillors, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship, page 25. And I believe we have Mark and Bob here. Would you like to come through to they can speak? Was that part of the plan? Yep. Mark and Bob, would you like to come forward to the front desk here? Jim, are you part of this, or? You can either sit in Councillor Marsh's or sit up the front there with them. How are we going from a metre apart? We're all meeting all our requirements? Yep, we're good. Welcome, Bob. Welcome, Mark, to the chamber. We've just got a thing with the Zoom that when you do speak, you'll need to push a little button in front and a red light will come on, and then after you're finished, we'll get you to turn it off so we don't get the feedback. But welcome to the chamber. Bob's been here before and expressed his views, so welcome back to you, Bob. And Jim, going to introduce us, or Gary, you? Jim. Over to you, Jim.
Good morning, councillors. So this item on your agenda is titled the Matikana Point Torohunga Road Seal Extension Proposal. The item is one of the council's selected seal extension projects. We've been delivering this current program since 2016, where your policy gave us direction in terms of selecting 30 kilometres of district roads for prioritised seal extension delivery. This one and 3 others are planned to be completed in the current summer and are contracted to Westlink to deliver. So if I could take the agenda item as read, and happy to answer any questions. Effectively, the recommendation is to continue to deliver your current program, and against the background of your direction to staff to review the current policy, and that has now expected to be consulted with the community in the new year as part of the annual plan process.
Thanks, Jim. Can we take questions?
I think probably let Bob and Mark
Yeah,
speak now.
that would be sensible, yeah. Bob, age wins out, so you're first, give you the first opportunity to speak with your views on the process.
Well, I think I already have.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Well, my request is the same. Is that I think your process was unfair in terms of all the people live along those roads. And that's all I asked for, was that a fair process be had and that you come back and you speak with all the people on those roads. I think about 30-something houses along all those roads. And that's all I ask.
Mark, an opportunity now to give his views of his and his neighbours from down that way. Morning, Mark.
Morena, ana ta kauniera, ngā tangata o te kauniera, me te mea Mr. Weber. Hoi anō. Just quickly, I don't know how quickly you cover 35 years. I hear there's policy in place for 2016. But 30-something years ago, the first bit of tāsio was put in from Opuriera Marae to the Kura. 20 years after that, we had another meeting at the Marae, and it was indicated then that it was going to go to Waihirere Road. The question was asked then, what's happening to the rest of the roads? They outlined exactly how you're doing it at the moment, Torohunga or Torohunga Road, and then Opuhi Road. 20 years after that first tāsio was laid, Waihirere was completed. And then 5 years ago, we met on the corner of Torohunga Road in Matikana. The mayor was present at the time. We had, I don't know, a robust discussion, I suppose, about the tāsio, because it was then that we were told that it was actually going to be narrowed from Waihirere to Torohunga Junction, if you like. And without using colourful words, it's something that we did not entertain. As well as that, there was a crossover halfway along the road where the banks precluded anybody seeing from crossing the road, coming from Torohunga Road down towards the barge. And it's still dangerous today. Anyway, long story short, the mayor indicated that either we have it as it stands, or it had to go back to the planning committee. And the ones that were there indicated that we would, if you like, concede to the idea because we were desperate for tāsio. I must say, to this day, you stop at least twice to let traffic pass. It's a kind of an idea, but never mind. So 5 years ago, it was indicated that we were going to get tāsio up Torohunga Road. And a year ago, the plans come out. The council advised us that this is the way the set out of the road is going to go. If you're interested, we're going to meet exactly, well, close to a year ago, halfway up the road. Now, we had that meeting. 2 councillors, the roading contractor, and some engineer were there. And there was some residents and myself, obviously. Now, the only question I asked was, what about the other road? And there was some sort of statistician that said, we've done all the homework. Your road is the one that's used the most. Not a problem. Anyway, they proceeded to tell us how the road was going to thing. They had this big map, and to me, that wasn't a commitment. That was something that was going to be done. In the meantime, Bob turned up and ripped into everybody, including ourselves, about what sort of process this was. Well, everybody went quiet. It took off. A year later, exactly a year later, I've been pursuing this, and we've ended up here. I didn't know it was going to be a shooting gallery. I just thought we were meeting a couple of roading people. But that's fine. That's what I'm saying today. I mean, I've got no beef with Bobby, but whatever concerns they've got on their road, we've got too. The thing is, we've just had brand new 12-hectare kiwi fruit established on top of the maize, the avocados, and of course the dairying up where we are. And roading is very important. Towards the end of Torohunga Road, where I live, the Cup Master just down from me asked me, "Where's our tāsiwa, boy?" I said, "I don't know. We're going to see." So this is the facts as I see it. Mate, I've got a letter to say it's going to happen. It was confirmed with the councillors. What's happening? Thank you.
It's in the aim of shooting gallery, Mark, but I do acknowledge I sat in your chair an hour or two ago and it did look a bit intimidating. I made the point looking up at this big wall and thought, well, it's not so friendly here after all, but we're certainly here to achieve outcomes for the whole district, you know, and we've got a number of roads around the place where we regularly get people in, but I acknowledge that we had a program, we published it, we put it out there and we've stuck to it, and that's been how we've driven. Bob did raise an issue that he thought, you know, his road was up. But anyway, I'll call for speakers or questions. Mayor, you look like you're ready to. Hey? All right. Bench.
I'm going to second the recommendation, but I'd like to speak as well.
Okay, we can manage that after. So looking around, I'll come back to you, Your Worship.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to move recommendations 1, 2, and 3. And I'm sorry, Bobby, but you know, decisions have to be made. We have a process, and that's the way it is. It's come through the Torohunga Road. So I'm more than happy to move the recommendation 1, 2, and 3. Just know that my apologies, Bob, in the outset. That's you know, not everybody can win, unfortunately.
So it's moved. Webber, second. Councillor Murray Bench.
I'd just like to say there's nothing fair about gravel roads within our district. And our number one priority is trying to seal them as many as we can and get as many done. And I've yet to have a cup of tea with you, sir, which you invited us for, but Gary and Peter had to get down to the board. Now, that would not have been a bribe, but if I compare it to Kumi Road, who are ready to actually have a riot in here if people start jumping up the list, because everyone is desperate to have their rural roads, gravel roads sealed. And I think that you have waited long enough. I was at the last meeting, that would be 5 years ago, and to widen that road would have meant another $100,000, which we didn't have, and everyone agreed that better signage would be the answer in the meantime. So I think, sir, we are doing the level-headed best we can, and Bob, I'm sorry, but join the queue, because it's slow and it's going to get more expensive. We've been told by Mr. Ellis that this morning, and so we've just got to do our level-headed best, and I'm fully in support of the recommendations here today.
Thank you, Councillor Murray Bench. Just before I go to Councillor Henry, for the sake of Mark and Bob, there's 2 recommendations. The first 2 are just procedural ones to receive the report, and it doesn't trigger our significance policy. The third is the key, and I guess you've heard the gist of it through the previous 2 speakers, that the seal extension on Torohunga Road proceeds as planned in accordance with the seal extension policy. So, Councillor Henry.
I too am a bit perplexed why the work has not gone ahead. Councillor Denyer and I were over there, and yes, you're absolutely correct. The decision was made to go ahead with it, and we met the contractors, and they were going to be starting in February. They had all the metal lined up. I have my suspicions why it may have been that there has been a delay. I too support the sealing of that road. But while we were over there, and I'm wondering, Jim, whether you can help me, that we went down on a tiki tour and we looked at the road that you're talking about, Bob, and if I may call you Bob, and I'm wanting to know whether that was in, and I brought it up over the council in council chambers about the dire condition of that road, and that I had an assurance that there was going to be some work done on that to clear up the routing and all that the rainwater had caused.
So you're speaking to support it.
And has that happened?
No, we're speaking to the motion. Sorry, time for questions was earlier. I'm sorry about that.
Okay,
You know the procedure.
well, that's maybe something you might.
Councillor Denia.
Yes, good morning. In a perfect world, I would like to have both roads sealed. However, we don't live in a perfect world. And it's important to remember that this is not about a competition between Matikana Point Road and Torohunga Road, but between every unsealed road in the district. We cannot start deviating from our policy in an ad hoc manner, as that would lead to chaos, uncertainty, and ultimately a breakdown in trust of council in its decision-making abilities. So I intend to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Denia. No right of reply. It seemed to have exhausted speakers. Thank you, councillors. I'll put those recommendations 1, 2 and 3 as I indicated to the two people here today. All those in favour? Those against? I declare it carried.
I just want to finish by saying that, listen to all of you, there's a lot of rubbish being talking. And I want to go back to what I said. I don't give two hoots whether the road is done or not on my side. What I do give a hoot about is the secret meetings. Secret meetings. That's a secret meeting if I was there down bottom there. Nobody knew about that. Nobody on our side of the road knew about that.
Okay,
That's
Bob.
why I came bowling down to, there's nobody on our side of the road knew about it. All you have to do was let us know. Really, that's all.
Thanks, Bob. What we've done is tried to be as transparent as possible. We're just going through, just about to exhaust that current list, and a next batch of properties will be done, and it will go up on the internet. So there is no secret. It's fully transparent. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We didn't know about our side of the road. Two sides of the road did not know anything about it. It even denied it, not like.
Yep.
It was done. Because it rains and it just builds up and builds up with just gathers it down. And all that fella does was come in with his grader, with his $2 grader from the $2 shop, and grades the sides of the roads, all the dirt off the sides of the road and put it in the middle of the road. And when it rains, and then the metal's all over the blown in place. So there's hardly any metal left on those roads.
Do you want to make
It's
any comment?
just clay. It's just clay.
Bob, I will get one of the two roading, either Jim, to respond to just the maintenance side of that. Do you want to make a comment, Jim, about the maintenance program?
Yes, yep. In terms of maintenance for unsealed roads, the council has a level of service and has an inspection regime, but at the same time, if residents have got concerns for that level of service and create a service request, we can follow that up and with our contractor. And as you know, Murray's on the island, and we'll follow it up with him and see whether he can do a job that matches the level of service we expect for the traffic volume level of activity on those island roads and every other road in the district. It's the same level of service for the low volume.
I'm not talking about any other district, I'm talking about ours.
Yep. So service request to council is the best way to communicate with us, and it gives us something to follow up with them.
Do we communicate here? How do we do that?
Just phone call to the council. Yep. And if I could add one other point, in terms of roadside meetings, the council expects us to, when we do a road improvement, to talk to the residents on that road only, rather than all the other.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's rubbish.
Yeah.
It's unfair.
Okay.
It's rubbish. You can tell me all you like.
Right.
It's rubbish.
Right.
It should be, we're
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Mark, for coming in. We know the commitment you make crossing that piece of water to get here, so it's not easy. So, oh, okay. So there was a good side to it. Okay, councillors, will adjourn for morning tea now, and we'll be back in 1/4 of an hour. Adjourn the meeting. back, councillors. Have I got the right to? Yep, I have. Councillors, 7 days is a long time. We just need a move and a seconder to change the order of 2 items of the business from the original agenda that went out. So we can address Te Puke at 11 o'clock. So I have His Worship the Mayor, Councillor Murray Beans. I'll put that all in favour. Against, I declare it carried. Councillors, page 38 of the agenda, connection of 58 Te Puna Road to the Mokoroa Transfer Pipeline. And I believe Rose and Ian are here today. Would you like to come up the front there? And so page 38. Yeah. Welcome, Coralie. Oh, you'll have to use your speaker eventually. Yep, the button.
Thanks. So today with me I have Rose. Rose owns the property at 58 Te Puna Road, where our new wastewater scheme for Te Puna commercial area is being constructed. So the pipeline, as you can see from the maps in your agenda, does go directly past Rose's property. And I'll let Rose do some of the talking now. And Rose has brought in some photos as well to share around her property.
Thank you. And thank you for the time that you've given me to actually present this. Just to give you a quick background, Persimmon Lane, it's really just a small boutique venue. We cater for weddings, high teas, meetings, very much into the community because we are small. We started about 15 years ago, 2015. And from that point on, I just opened this little cake decorating studio and it became very, very popular and people loved coming. But then we got to the stage where we were being asked to do weddings, as I say, high teas, birthdays, whatever. So we decided we had to either go one way or the other. And we had, quite a fair number of the public coming in for it. So we said, right, we would go the venue way and where it requires bookings, phone calls, so we know what we've actually got on. I'll just go back on these here. We feel that we're a real asset to Te Puna. Being rural, we're unique, we're a little bit different. We're very community minded. We've helped out on a lot of occasions. We've had young brides come in that can't afford a huge big wedding. We've helped them out. So we've been, we're sort of going down that road and we've been down that road. We've really strived to be aesthetically pleasing. Council, when we went for the original resource consent, required that we blend into the community, and I think we have done. We've got the little cottage, and then we went from a cottage, we actually put a little barn on, and we only really put the barn on originally just to carry the equipment and things from the wee cottage. But from that point on, people wanted to use it, so we've kept it small, we've kept it, it's quite high end, it's lovely. What you're looking at on that photo at the moment is where our sewage is here. Now, the wastewater really came to the fore. We've never actually really had a problem with the wastewater. It's worked very well for us, but again, we're very, very careful. Environmentally, we really care what we do. I'll admit I go in and do the dishes a lot in the kitchen when the kitchens are used because I like to know what goes down. So we've kept it very pure, kept it well run. But we thought we've had a lot of problems over the years because we thought originally we had been signed off for our wastewater, which we had been, but when we put the wee barn on, they wanted us to extend that. So we took on an engineering company and we said, please handle it, please do it all, we'll pay what's required, which we did. And they believed it had gone through, we believed it had gone through, and unfortunately, people coming and going, personnel in the regional council and with the company that we were dealing with, as well as Inspire, which was another company that regional council were using. It got lost, they lost our files. So we ended up really with a few problems. And about that time, council were putting down the wastewater. We did look at doing it at that stage, but this we believed was working quite well. But then we got a bill from regional council for it, which was huge. So we looked at this and thought, oh, no, look, if we've got to add to it, they wanted us to add another 25 metres on. We went into discussions with them. It became very, very messy. So we thought, no, we would approach regional council, which Western Bay Council, which is what we've done. Our house on the top of the property, just to give you a bit of background on that, is on its complete own bedding system. So that is not an issue whatsoever. This is only the commercial arm of the property. And we just feel that, you know, we've been so careful. We understand that these wastewater systems only last 10 years. That's pretty much their maximum. After that point of time, you either have to dig them up, redo the whole thing. It's a very costly exercise to do so. We've, as you can see from that photo, got shelters that are fairly close. The shelters will send out root systems. And behind that white, you've got the actual flowers there, which is the drive part. At the back of that is where the wastewater goes up and down at the present time, and there's 75 metres in there. So we just thought, well, with the cost of this, it would be far better. Also within this area over there, we've I don't know if they're one of the other photos from there. You'll see that we have an area, a couple of areas there where we have, especially for weddings, we have young children, and the health and safety is absolutely vital to us, because with the children going in there, we have, it's not going to produce there. Okay, we have, you know, children sitting on the ground picnicking. We have adults there as well. With wastewater where it is at the present time, as I say, we monitor it. We're very careful with it. But again, you know, you just never know. And with a 10-year life, we've already been with this system for since 2015, as I said. So there could be the possibility that things can go wrong, and they have to one day probably go wrong. And we just don't want to run that risk with children sitting around there. We don't have a lot of area. In fact, we're quite condensed in site there to actually extend the wastewater. Now that is showing the front end. That is actually showing the distance. You'll see on the right-hand side there, the steps coming down. We are probably about, 25, 30 metres from the council wastewater, which runs where that pillar is at the bottom. So you can see how close we are to it, which would be a very practical solution for us, very safe solution, environmentally, you know, really, really good. So I think, you know, that on its own would be just great if we could get onto that. We just feel very secure in the next few years to know that it's just one less worry. Cost-wise, it's going to cost us. We realise that, but we're prepared to sort of bite the bullet on that and say, well, for the environmental factor, that's a big thing. And just remembering Te Puna Springs, and we're very aware of that. And we, you know, it's important that we really look after it and make sure that, you know, that what we do is totally correct. Is there any more? I don't know if there's any more photos within that which will show possibly how narrow we are within it. Yeah, there's possibly that first one. To go to the first one, maybe. Yeah, is that where we've had that one? Yeah, I can't see. Oh, if you go to the right, go right to the right-hand side there, come back, that one. No, over to the right, that one. Now, that one there is a photo. Now, that is an excellent photo because that will show you how close we are. Where those bushes are on the right-hand side down there is pretty much where we have to finish because we've got a shelter actually adjoining that. and we have to have a shelter trimmer be able to go up and down there. So where they're suggesting if we ever did put the 25 metres down, you can see we also have a huge magnolia tree down there. The roots come out extensively. So that would really condense us into a very, very small space to be able to put it. And should we need to extend it any more later on, to get through those roots, we would literally have to be pulling trees out. That left-hand side goes down the drive, and you can see it's just so close to the wastewater at present there. That's the big car park area we have. We put that in council requirements. So we have paid quite a bit to actually, you know, to be able to do this. And we, you know, we take pride in that we have done, and we really do look after it, such care. And we just, as I say, we think we're a real asset, and, you know, it's something that Te Puna, I think, really values and needs. And to make that easier for us to run, and safer and health-wise and environmentally, I think is crucial.
Thanks, Rose. Councillors, any questions of Rose? You've got the report there in front of you. Councillor Dean.
Between your that car park that you showed there and your other house, it shows
Microphone on. Yep.
between that barn and your house, there's a large area of grass that looks as though it's mown. Can't that be used for a disposal field for your on-site system?
You're talking about coming back up from the car park. It's very, very, it's steep, it's sloping, and our house sits up on the top, so it can't be used for that at all. You'll see it, it looks like a grass area, but it is a grass area behind it, but it's extremely steep. And they've just said, no, we definitely can't use it. The only place really is that place down to the right-hand side. But as I say, we've got all the roots and trees to contend with, and the lovely gardens. And if we start pulling that out, at the present time, the wastewater goes through those gardens that you saw on that photo on that right-hand side. So they go through there, and to extend that, we would have to also pull out other trees further down. And remembering we've had this in for 5 years already, and we've checked, and they've said, look, there's about a 10-year lifespan on these bedded systems. So, and for us to be using it in this as a commercial enterprise, you know, even though we're very, very careful, you just never know. And we certainly don't want to end up like the village, you know, and down there with the problems that they've had to try and repair something like that quickly. If you've got functions coming up or anything like that, it's pretty diabolical.
Any further questions? Councillor Murray Bent.
So my questions are to Coralie. Coralie, you've been involved in the sewage scheme going into the Morais and also into the area, the commercial area at Te Puna. And your recommendation was there was no reason why this Persimmon Lane could not be connected. Would you like to elaborate, please?
Gary, do you want to?
Sorry, Councillor Murray Bench, could you repeat that question?
I said that Coralie was involved with the development of the plan for the sewage scheme to go into the commercial area at the Te Puna village. And the Persimmon Lane, which is so close to it, I asked Coralie, was there room, in her opinion, for the Persimmon Lane to be connected? I'm asking her as the engineer because I believe she said there was no reason why it couldn't be connected.
So Gary, do you want to take this? So it's talking about the mechanical side versus the planning side.
Yes, I think there's two parts to that question that we have to consider. Firstly, is whether physically you can connect. Yes, you physically can connect. Has the system the ability to take wastewater? You're aware when we went through the exercise with the Te Puna village and the previous discussions, we were right on the limits. So we were literally in the margin of error in terms of the capacity of the discharge into the Torohunga city system. The council at the time, when you considered the Tupuna village, there was also, through that process, you looked at other properties that could have connected at that stage. And at that point, the council made the decision to decline any other connections. The village was seen as a specific issue because they could not solve their wastewater problems on site. And it was also a zoned commercial area. So I guess to summarise is that previous council's decisions have been no connections. Physically, we're right on those limits in terms of the 30-year predictions with our agreement with Torohunga City for discharge.
Further question through you, Mr. Ellis. Over the years, I've listened to the fact there was no capacity, and we've been able to move and make capacity on a number of occasions. Here we've got a very small environment just outside and could be connected with no real pressure on any further on the system, really. Is that not correct? Because it's unique. There's not anybody else there that can be connected but this one.
No, that's not correct. Anyone that the pipe goes past could be connected. So the question is, are you opening it up for one property or for every property? And the council's direction in the past has been this area and this area, and that's it.
Your worship. Yeah.
That's not a statement from I favour the recommendation. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation. Oh, sorry, slow learner. Recommendations 1, 2 and 3. We've discussed this at length and we know the capacity. We know the reason the pipeline was put in, and we've got to be very mindful of any precedent we might set. Because as Mr. Ellis has just said, we're up against the capacity. I know it's disappointing, but I think we've no option but to move, well, to go with recommendations 1, 2 and 3 as recommended by staff.
So we have a mover. Do I have a seconder for that? I do. Councillor Sol. You'll second it for discussion.
Can I just say?
Speak. Well, sorry, we've got a move and a seconder now, so we'll just go through our format, our standing orders, how we operate now with councillors to speak to or against the motion as it was. Sorry, we gave you a good chance there at the start. Councillor speakers to this. Councillor Murray.
I don't know why I'm the only one. Mr. Chairman, I do not agree that this is a difficult issue. It's a small property. It's a gem within the Tupuna area. It has come up against an incompetent regional council that failed to actually do its work in the first place. But since then, we've allowed Morai to come on. We're allowing the Tupuna village to come on. We've allowed Amakara School 21 school to come on. And and here in Tupuna, we'll allow the White House to go on up in the Tupuna village area that's come in late, and compared with the Persimmon that's been there for a number of years and deserves the respect and the support of this council. And I'm firmly of the view that we should be pushing for this to actually go ahead. And it's not often that we have such a dedicated environment where it's beautiful and it's quite unique for our district. And it deserves the support of the council to let the people spend their thousands of dollars and connect to our pipeline. It goes right past the gate. And so I would urge you to actually, and Newman Park does the same, and it's got the surge scheme on the other side. They've been lucky because they've got a bit more ground, but here it's different. And I just think this is one area where we could actually do the decent thing and let the people become involved and link up.
Thank you. Do I have any further speakers on this? Councillor Dean.
Mr. Chairman, if we approve, if we approve the connection, we'll be actually setting a precedent. And I don't believe that we can set a precedent. So therefore, I actually support the three points that we're recommending. It's the pipeline was put in for the benefit of the development of Omokoro. And we've managed to scrape in a few extras, but we can't just keep on adding and adding unless we have some innovative way of treating the wastewater before the water goes into the pipeline, and that's a long way off. I can't support it. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Councillor Henry.
Well, and I've just looked at it, and it is quite a unique setting there. And I think that we have already set a precedent by allowing the commercial area in Te Puna in. And we have then allowed a competing organisation to be able to continue their business, and their sewage system was somewhat dubious, and now we're allowing them to come in, and these people may actually be out of business because of our decision. So for that matter, I would actually support that they are actually connected to the sewage system.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I'll be supporting the recommendations as moved. I am concerned for the people and their business there, and appreciate that they have to find a solution. But I don't believe that it's council's responsibility to find that solution for them. We've already well canvassed that we don't want to overextend the capacity of the pipe. We don't want to set a precedent that maybe opens the door for a whole lot of other people. And if we were to approve it, we're actually sending a message to other people that they can set all sorts of businesses up in rural zoned areas and then apply to join the pipeline. And we have a district plan and processes for good reason. And for all those reasons, I will be supporting the resolutions as moved.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I basically seconded the motion so that we could get some discussion going in the first point. And actually, I look at it and say capacity is an issue, and we've just got to be practical about it. As Councillor Murray-Benj has already said, that we've set a precedent already, if that's the case, and that's already hanging us if we continue with other businesses by bringing other areas into this line. The fact is, the cold hard facts are that we just don't have the capacity. And so it's telling us now, again, talking about three waters, that we're going to have to face another issue probably somewhere along the line. Actually, sorry, Mr. Chair. So to me, as I then repeated, I guess I supported it to get discussion going, and we've had it or been having it. And to me, we are at capacity. We will continue to otherwise create massive albatrosses around our necks at present. I think it has been covered a little bit also by our Deputy Mayor about businesses and how they could then spring up and then create more pressure. It does not get us away from the fact that we have a problem. We're going to have to address these problems, and we're going to have to address them flaming well soon. I certainly would hate to be in the appellant's position, but I guess there are other answers, and I just feel that we've got to start to hold up now until we have those answers, and we need to bring this forward in our discussions in general.
Councillor Daly.
Yes, I'd have to reluctantly support the motion, I'm afraid. And I feel there's a parallel with our rural water supply where we might have a perfectly good water supply going past someone's gate, and our new policy requires that any new connection, any new properties beside that water pipeline actually have to have their own water tank and supply and pump to supply their house. So it's frustrating that the policy council has causes problems for the individuals in these cases, and I certainly sympathise with your case. Part of our discussion on the wastewater future was that it may well be more capacity in the future, but we're not at that point yet. So I'm sorry about that.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you. A few moments ago, we discussed ad hoc changes to our sealed policy and decided that was not the way we wanted to go, that we had a policy and we were going to stick to it. And I feel that, unfortunately, the same has to apply in this situation. We have a policy and we should stick to it. It is entirely regrettable that Regional Council have mucked you about so badly and have left you in this situation. But if we keep making ad hoc changes, then it's a never-ending story. So unfortunately, I shall have to support the motion.
Thank you. Is it the end of speakers? Appears it is. No final words. I'll put that recommendation on page 38 of the agenda, councillors. Recommendations 1, 2 and 3, moved Webber, second Sol. All those in favour? Aye. Those against?
No.
Wish that recorded. Recorded. No Benson. Henry, I declare it carried. Thank you, Rose. Thank you for coming in today. Right, off to Te Puke, wastewater. Morning of wastewater. Coralie, you're back. You're with us?
I'm back. Oh. Yeah, I'm back, and I've got some additional people joining me today as well. Today we're talking about the Te Puke wastewater alternative options, and we have members of our working party that's been working through this for a number of years joining us as well.
G'day, Bob, an old adversary from many years ago. Good to see you again.
Not adversary.
No, sorry, teammate. Oh, you got the better motel, unfortunately. I always had a grudge against that, but anyway.
Here you hold the checkbook, Doc.
Bob was the manager of a New Zealand volleyball team that was slightly higher in the pecking order than mine, and he got the deluxe version with the swimming pool, and we got the second rate. But anyway, I'm not holding that against
You got to go to the live league game though, Don. We did that.
protocols, but anyway. Coralie, back to wastewater. Enough volleyball talk.
Thanks. Yeah, so thank you. So with me today, I have Bob Shaw here, who's our consultant working on this project. We also have Mark Boyle, Barry Roderick, and Michael Jones. As well as this working party, we also have John Scrimmager and Grant Daly sitting on the group, and we have 2 iwi representatives that were unable to make it today, who's Alva Conroy and Helen Beale. So I do just want to kick this off but just by acknowledging the amount of work that's been happening over the last 5 years. We did start this back in 2016 when we were renewing the resource consent for the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant, and the people sitting with me here today have contributed a significant amount of their own time working through this project. We've done site visits around New Zealand, around the North Island, looking at different treatment plants and different disposal options. We've had a number of different workshops. We've undertaken quite a lot of scoring, ranking of options, and we're now in a position where we've got 33 different sites, potential disposal sites, where we could take the wastewater from Te Puke wastewater treatment out of the Waiari and into a land-based disposal system. So today we're really just looking for an opportunity to present the report to council, which you have in front of you, and looking to get some direction to move forward with the recommendations, which is that we start doing negotiations with landowners. There is a separate report that's been included within the confidential section of today's meeting, which does give you a bit of a background around the land sites that have been identified. They are confidential at the moment because we haven't had any conversations with landowners. And we're also wanting to embark on some consultation with the wider community. So we're looking for council to endorse that, the process that we've taken to date and going forward. So I do just want to invite the members of the group, if anyone wants to say anything.
Before you do that, Coralie, my apologies, Michael, I didn't recognise you under the mask. A long-standing councillor and chair who spent many hours in this very seat I'm in now. So welcome to you, and Mark and Barry obviously as well. So now I've got my bearings. Bob was the first to peel off his mask. I didn't recognise you, the other guys. That's the way, Mark. Yep, we're all amongst friends. Right. Looks like Barry's going to.
Yeah, on behalf of the group, I'd like to thank Bob for the way he's gone about his business. It's been very helpful. He's always been affable. There's been some pretty awkward questions asked, and we've asked him to go away and do research. He's come back and presented everything in front of us and explained it to us. We're lay people, and it's been a very good process for us. And also I'd like to say how good it is having Elva and Helen and Dean Favell on board now, and that's a big plus for this group.
Michael, you never saw the word. How's the process
Thank you,
gone?
Mr. Chairman. Your Worship, kia ora koutou. I guess, just sort of endorse what Barry's been saying. I think it's been a long and deliberate process. I'd be very interested to, get back any feedback where council's at. It has taken a while to, and we have been very cautious about it. And I applaud Bob and the work that has been done by the various engineers and reporting people. And I think council can take some sort of confidence from that. From a community perspective, the Waiari is a pretty special river, and it has a lot of value to our community, a lot of historical value and cultural value and environmental value. And it is not just a question, and I want to allay any sort of thoughts that may be around the table that this is an issue between tangata whenua and progress or whatever. It is not a divisive issue, and we all are concerned about the best solution here, and we want to get it right. And I think council can take confidence that a good process has been progressed. Thank you.
Mark, do you want to add anything from the community point of view? You're right at the forefront there.
No, just to endorse Barry and Mike and the group and the work they did, a lengthy process, solid body of work, and I think the community at large can be very, satisfied that the content and the approach to all of this has been done in a very thorough way.
Bob, did you want to add anything from the technical side? Happy with Coralie's part? You do the hard work in the background and leave it to the rest. That's fine. Right. So, councillors, any questions you have before we move to page 32? Councillor Denia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was struck by the parallels between this and the Kari process, which was also extremely thorough. We signed that process off on the 14th of October. And so I was just, perhaps one for Coralie is, has that one been put on hold for a few weeks so that this process can catch up and they go along in parallel?
Yes, in a nutshell. I think ideally what we would be doing is, if we're going to do community consultation, it would be logical to do them side by side in parallel. So if the community is understanding the decisions that have to be made, they understand the decisions that have to be made for both ends of the district. So yes.
Thank you.
Good work, Councillor. The old East and West is alive and well in the Western Bay. Councillor No Bench.
Could I just say, you've got so far and you're doing so well. What do you think would be the timeline? And is it going to impact on Rangiuru's development? Because I think, isn't it, Mark, Rangiuru's going to link into the scheme? So what's the timeline and will it hold up Rangiuru development?
The timeline, if you look at it from a consenting perspective, is that we have to have a future direction set by 2029. So we do still have a bit of time up our sleeve. I think from the Workings Party's perspective, and you know, I don't want to speak for them, but certainly the idea, and I guess from a council perspective as well, the idea would be to move it along and as soon as practically possible, because once there's a decision made, it gives direction on how best to manage the treatment plant and the processes and stuff like that. So it is still a bit of work to be done. We still have to go through each of the different sites and get an understanding of any barriers on site, like soil conditions and that sort of stuff. In terms of Rangiuru Business Park, you're correct, the wastewater is coming through the treatment plant. We're currently working on an upgrade to the treatment plant in terms of its processing capacity. That's not going to be impacted from this process. The disposal options won't have any real impact be impacted from the flows coming from Rangiuru Business Park. The only difference would be that we have to look at a bigger site, which we're already looking at for this one.
So you're saying that the Rangiuru can continue its development and it won't be held up by this process?
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect.
Right, just got Councillor Marsh before I take His Worship the Mayor. Kevin. Do you want to turn your speaker on, Kevin?
High tech. We've got the people that you're going to approach to put this on. The long-term effects of that, is it going to be, you know, we've got the worry at the moment. I'd just like to know the long-term effects on where we're going to put it. We've got it in Rotorua, where we've had a real problem coming back into the lakes, and it all ends up down the bottom in Kaituna at any rate. So I just want to know that's 100% sure that we're not going to do something similar to our area.
Yeah, and that's something that we would be looking at the next stage. So now we know around about where the sites would be, would then start working through that level of optioneering to understand what the long-term impacts of discharging the wastewater there would be. Any new site would still need to get a resource consent. So it would still have to go through an assessment of effects and go through community consultation and everything that comes with doing a resource consent to make sure that there will be no long-term impacts from the new site where we're discharging.
Thank you, Carly. Right, Gary, Your Worship.
Yeah. Thanks. We have no option but to move recommendations 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, and D. This is a requirement of the consent, and I think, you know, we congratulate the people on the work that they've done so far. You've done the easy bit. This is an alternatives option. This is an alternative. When I'm looking at D, just remember the status quo is still in the mix. But we have to do all the scientific analysis now on the efficacy of what you're trying to do. And this is something we have to do, whether we like it or not, the same for Katikati. So we're obliged to actually approve what you've done, and thank you very much for your effort so far.
Thank you, Worship. Do I have a second there? Do Councillor Daly? Any speakers wish to speak to recommendations 1, 2, and 3 as moved? Councillor Murray Bench.
I'd just like to say, nice to have such a talented group involved, and with all the experience that you two men, Michael and Mark, have got at the end there, along with our new lass, Coralie Lee. And I just think the quicker you can move, the better it would be for everybody. So best of luck.
Councillor Daly, you wish to speak?
Yes, I'd also support the motions, the recommendations, and also thank the people at the front there for all the work that's gone into this. Bob, you've been there from the start through 2 or 3 different companies. 3. So the companies have changed, but Bob remains the same, so that's great. And obviously Kelvin initially alongside Coralie, and Barry and Mike and Mark, it's been great working with you and all the considered questions, like you say, that you put to Bob and Coralie. The site visits were eye-opening. I think up to the Coromandel to look at the 3 new $30 million a piece plants up there and how they disposed of their options, and that was quite a big factor in some of our decision making. I think one thing that we didn't take into account, which I noticed the Katikati group had, was an economic factor which we didn't actually take into account with our criteria analysis. I think we certainly didn't take into account the cost of all the different options, but an economic output from these options is an interesting option that we might have assisted us as well. But also the tangata whenua representatives, we've had several different along the way, and some of that change has been due to changing governance within their own iwi authorities, but they've been very helpful and respectful in a two-way manner, I think, and they were very clear that in principle some of the things we were discussing were not palatable to them, but overall they were engaging in the process in good faith, and I think we ended up in a pretty good space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Your worship, no further words. Are you voting, or are you wish to speak? Okay, Councillor Henry, final words.
I thank you for the report. It was really a very good and easy to read report. And I'm totally supportive of your top 4 recommendations. What little voice I did hear of the tangata whenua in there has stated that the Wairiri River is the most pristine river, and all the high scoring ones are the ones that are not putting it directly into the water, and I totally support that. So well done to all your work and for the report. Great.
Coralie outlined the timeline. Jody Rickard, Jody, welcome. Page 43 of your agenda, councillors. Wellbeing plan implementation update. Barbara, do you want to start making your way towards the front too? I see you're next cab, aren't you? In a minute. Of the digital hub. Welcome, Jody. Councillors, page 43.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mayor and councillors. My report is an update on where we are at with implementing the wellbeing plan and the local priorities that were identified in that plan. The report is for your information for you to receive, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have, but the report is just there to be taken as read. Thank you.
Any glaring questions pop out when you read the reports, councillors? Councillor Gray.
Thanks for the report, Jody. I just wanted to point out that as our community board projects, we've got the storyboards that we'd like to have established, and high on our priority list is the dual signage and signage in town, and whether there is some merit in meeting with us and discussing this and maybe working the projects in together, because this is on our agenda as well. But just hats off to the progress made so far, and like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. I just got a question from Councillor Granger as well. He may well second it in a minute. Councillor Granger.
Thank you. Point 21, Jody, on rural connectivity and issues up the Wakamarama. Has the advent of the Starlink system being available in New Zealand made a change to that now that anybody can connect to the satellites, no matter where they are?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of that, so I can follow up on that and find out. At the moment, what I do know is that the Rural Connectivity Group have been progressing a resource consent application to get a tower in, I think it's on the corner of Ross Road, and they've been working to get in touch with the landowner around that so that they can lodge the resource consent application. But I can follow up on that and see how that fits with the work that the Rural Connectivity Group are doing.
Dean?
Jody, in the report on Kaimai Ward actions, you mentioned about security cameras. The 20,000 a year that's to be devoted to the Kaimai Ward out of that budget, is that additional to the funding that we set aside for security cameras? And if it is, where is it going to be spent? Because the McLaren Falls one is actually already been done.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is separate from that. So that $20,000 for security cameras for the Kaimai Ward is still available. That is from that separate budget that was set for CCTV. I believe the process for that is through the policy that Council has adopted around that and the criteria that you've set for how that funding will be allocated. So that can be spent elsewhere in the ward other than at McLaren Falls, because that one has already, as you said, been completed.
Councillor Henry, followed by Murray Bench.
If Councillor Gray is recommending that report be accepted, I would like to second it. And I'd also like to thank the Policy Department for allowing the time that Jody has put into the work, in particular out in the Katikati Waihi Beach Ward. She has been very professional and she has sourced all sorts of information to support new people into our group. And thank you, the steering group out there have really appreciated the time you've given us.
Thank you, Councillor Henry.
I just, crime prevention cameras, delighted to see that they are so successful at McLaren Falls. One of the things that I found slightly disappointing was that all that work was going on and the Kaimai Ward councillors knew nothing about it. And I've worked closely up there for so many years and presented before Torohunga City and asked them for a crime prevention camera, and they said, well, it's Western Bay's problem, and but they were happy to actually monitor the camera when we got it. So the background work was all sort of done, but I think it's really important that when we don't have a community board, that the Kaimai Ward councillors are kept better informed about what is actually happening. The lights and the security cameras up there look good, really good. And I note that you want to improve the entrance to the park itself. Was that going to come out of the same money? Because that's actually Torohunga City's responsibility.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. In answer to your second question around the entrance to the park, what we are planning to do is to work with Torohunga City Council on a sort of concept plan for that area. And so that will have, that concept planning work will be done and then costing's done, and that would come through through probably joint budgets from TCC and Western Bay around, you know, depending on who owns the land that the work is happening on. So that's not from this wellbeing plan budget, that would come from a facilities and reserves budget. So that's sort of the next step in that process. In response to your first point around the engagement with the elected members around that. So that's part of the reason why we've come to report to you today, is so that you are informed of what's happening with the wellbeing plan implementation. And we'll do that on a 6-monthly basis. The budget was approved 1 July 2021. So this has been our first opportunity within that 6 months to report to you on what's happening. But we do have other ways that we can communicate with elected members, and I'll take that on board and make sure you are up to speed with what's happening.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it looks good. So the final result couldn't be better.
Perhaps if I can make a comment too about that, working with the community. So I allocated Kerry Little to try and progress those cameras to work with the community. So they're working with the, I guess I'd call it the Ward Association, the ratepayers group. So it was deemed to be working at an operational level, and she helped to broker the agreements between PowerCo and TCC and ourselves, Kerry Little. So Kerry is my operations manager. She's on screen now, and she runs the emergency management for us, but she also has other duties. And so her role was to broker it. It was seen as operational. It wasn't seen as a political one that required councillor input.
Thank you, Gary. No, Gary's gone, that's fine. So I have the report, page 43, moved Gray, second Henry. I will put that, all in favour, receive those against, declare it carried. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
We'll all read your next report with great vigour now to make sure we're fully up to play. Welcome, Barbara.
Morning.
The Centre Digital Hub, lots of good news. You're going to tell us all about that?
Well, a little bit of, lots of good news. My report is also informational, and that is not a report for you as a council, but a copy of the report that I need to provide to MB every 6 months. So this time we've simply just popped it in your agenda so it's there for your information, and if you had any questions.
Sure, Councillor Henry keeps a firm eye on things up that way. Anything? You all happy? It's good? Yeah. Sounds pretty straightforward there, Barbara. Yep. It's a happy campus up there. Right, I need to move in a second. I've got Murray Bench and Sol. I'll put that. All in favour? And those against, declare it carried. Thank you. It's horrible way around about monitoring. Yep. Oh, yep, she's under control. Yep. Councillors, we've reached that stage where we need to move to public excluded, the confidential side for some contract